The wind moves low across the northern sea, carrying salt, carrying cold, carrying the hush of distant waves breaking against blackened stone. Tonight, as sleep begins to take hold, we journey into the foggy space between folklore and fear. If you're listening beneath drifting clouds or wrapped in the quiet of your room, feel free to share your setting in the comments. These stories take on new life when we hear where they're being dreamt. This is the tale of the Nuckelavee, a creature born of sea mist and storm shadow, said to haunt the lonely coasts and dark waters of Scotland's northern isles. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. Welcome to Fairytales After Dark. Far beyond the soft hills and wooded valleys, where the land thins and breaks into stone, the sea presses close against the edge of the world. Here, in the Orkney Islands, the wind never truly rests. It circles, it scours, it whispers across ancient cliffs and carries the memory of countless tides. The landscape is spare, treeless, exposed, shaped by salt and storm. Villages cling to sheltered inlets, while long stretches of shoreline remain untouched, unclaimed, watching. This is where the legend of the Nuckelavee took root, not in warmth, not in comfort, but in isolation. The sea has always held a different authority here. It feeds, it carries, it takes. Fishermen once spoke of it in quiet tones. Farmers watched it with wary respect, for storms rose without warning, and sickness sometimes followed its retreat. And within this uneasy relationship, a figure emerged, the Nuckelavee. In the oldest accounts, the creature is described not as a single form, but as a merging of bodies, a vast, horse-like shape, its skin peeled away, leaving muscle and sinew exposed to the air. Upon its back, a towering humanoid torso, joined seamlessly at the spine, with long arms, and a massive head rolling slightly as it moved. There was no covering, no fur, no hide, only raw flesh, dark and glistening, reflecting moonlight and mist alike. Its breath was said to poison crops, its presence to wither fields, its passing to spread disease among livestock and people. Yet it did not hunt, it wandered. At night, when the tides were low and the moon cast silver paths across black water, the Nuckelavee was said to emerge from the sea, not crashing, not roaring, but rising, step by step, from foam and shadow, dragging itself onto land, leaving wet impressions in sand and stone. Its arrival brought silence. Dogs ceased their barking. Birds vanished from the air. Even the waves seemed to hesitate. Then, slowly, it would begin to move inland. The villagers did not wait to see it. Doors were barred, fires dimmed, candles shielded, families pressed close together, holding breath, listening to the wind and surf, and waiting. No one wished to draw its attention, for those who did rarely returned unchanged. In many accounts, the Nuckelavee brought drought, its breath souring soil, its shadow spoiling seed. Entire fields would fail in the seasons following its passage. In others, disease followed, sudden illness, lameness in livestock, fever among the people. The cause was never seen, only felt. And so the creature became explanation, not for fear alone, but for misfortune. When crops failed, when cattle sickened, when storms ruined harvest, it was said the Nuckelavee had passed nearby. Yet, unlike many monstrous figures, it did not act with malice. It did not seek suffering. It existed. And in its existence, disaster followed, like frost, like flood, like blight, not cruel, but indifferent. In this way, the Nuckelavee came to embody the unyielding power of the sea itself, unconcerned with human hope, unaware of human plans, moving according to its own rhythms. The creature's only known weakness was fresh water, where streams crossed stone, where rainfall pooled among the hills, where rivers carved their way toward the sea. The Nuckelavee was said to falter. It could not cross running water, and so villages settled near burns and brooks, using their quiet flow as natural protection, a thin silver boundary between safety and shadow. Even today, old settlements often cluster near freshwater sources, their placement shaped not only by necessity, but by inherited instinct. Some stories speak of brave men who lured the creature toward rivers, leading it across narrow paths, always careful to remain just beyond reach. until the creature was forced to halt, stranded on one side, roaring in silent fury. But such stories are rare. Most simply waited for dawn. By morning, the Nuckelavee would retreat to the sea, leaving behind quiet devastation, fields scorched by invisible rot, livestock weak, the air heavy with a lingering sense of wrongness. And yet, life continued. Seeds were replanted, animals replaced, homes rebuilt, because the land had always demanded resilience. The Nuckelavee is not a demon in the traditional sense. It has no horns, no hellfire, no allegiance to darkness. It belongs instead to the liminal world between land and ocean, between safety and danger, between calm and storm. It is a creature of thresholds, and thresholds are never gentle. Across cultures, coastal folklore often carries the same weight. Sea serpents, drowned spirits, storm gods, leviathans, all reflections of humanity's fragile position at the edge of vast water. The Nuckelavee stands among them, unique in form, yet familiar in purpose, to remind that the sea is never conquered. Even now, when satellites trace its currents and radar maps its storms, the ocean remains unpredictable. Tides still claim ships. Winds still tear apart coastlines. Fog still blinds without warning. And in that uncertainty, the memory of the Nuckelavee remains, not as terror, but as reverence. Now, as the wind outside softens and the rhythm of breath grows slow, let the coastline return in your thoughts. The dark cliffs, the rolling mist, the endless horizon. Somewhere beyond the reach of sight, the sea waits, patient, unmoved, and within its depths, something ancient still stirs. It spoke in tides, in wind, in the slow grinding of stone against stone. Its language was rhythm, endless, patient, without concern for human meaning. Those who lived beside it learned to listen, not with their ears alone, but with instinct, with caution, with reverence. The Nuckelavee emerges from this listening, not as invention, but as interpretation, a way to give shape to forces too vast to hold. The people of the Northern Isles lived close to the edge of endurance. Their homes clung to narrow strips of arable land. Their survival depended on thin soil, fragile harvests, uncertain fishing. Every storm threatened ruin. Every failed season carried the weight of hunger. In such a world, nature was never distant. It stood beside them, breathed against their windows, whispered through their walls. The Nuckelavee became the face of that closeness, not malicious, not cruel, but absolute. Its form reflects this truth. Half horse, half man, bound into a single moving body. The horse, power, motion, endurance. The human, awareness, witness, memory, together. They become inevitability, a creature that does not choose its path, but follows it. In older cultures, horses were seen as bridges between worlds. They carried warriors into battle and souls into death. They crossed rivers, traversed wilderness, endured distance. By merging the horse with human form, the legend creates a being that moves freely between realms, land and sea, life and decay, past and present. The Nuckelavee is always crossing, never arriving. Its skinless body is perhaps its most haunting feature, but beneath the shock of imagery lies symbolism. Skin is protection, barrier, separation. To be without it is to exist without boundary. The Nuckelavee feels everything: cold water, biting wind, salt spray. It is fully exposed to the elements it embodies. This makes it not monstrous, but elemental. In this way, the Nuckelavee becomes a walking storm, a living tide, a breath of the North Sea given form. The sickness attributed to its passing mirrors the symbolism: blight, fever, rot. These are not acts of aggression, they are consequences. When salt floods soil, crops fail. When storms batter land, disease follows. When animals weaken, illness spreads. The Nuckelavee does not cause these events, it announces them. This distinction matters because it transforms fear into understanding. The creature is not punishing, it is signaling, a living warning, that the balance has shifted, that the sea has crossed its invisible boundary. Fresh water, the only thing said to repel it. Rain, streams, rivers, these are the land's response. Fresh water cleanses, softens, restores. Where salt corrupts, fresh water heals. This ancient opposition between salt and fresh reflects humanity's deepest environmental instincts. Even now, fresh water remains life's foundation. In the old stories, it was sanctuary. People built their homes beside flowing streams, not merely for drinking, but for protection. A quiet shield running endlessly, guarding against unseen harm. There is something profoundly calming in this. The idea that safety is not force, but flow. Not defense, but continuity. In the presence of the Nuckelavee, humans did not fight. They endured, they waited, they adapted, and in doing so, they learned patience. The coastal world moves slowly, not because it is gentle, but because survival demands caution. The sea teaches restraint. It rewards those who observe and punishes those who rush. This rhythm seeps into the mind, softening urgency, easing tension, and the Nuckelavee embodies that tempo, unhurried, relentless, calm, even in fear. There is order. Across the long winters, when darkness swallowed the day, families gathered near hearths, sharing warmth, sharing stories. Outside, wind scoured cliffs, waves thundered against stone, the world roared. Inside, voices softened. The Nuckelavee moved through these moments, a presence hovering just beyond safety, reminding listeners of the thin walls between comfort and chaos. And in that awareness, gratitude grew, for shelter, for warmth, for stillness. The legend taught appreciation. By contrast, as generations passed, fear mellowed into familiarity. The Nuckelavee became part of the coastal psyche, a background presence, like distant thunder or gathering clouds. It did not dominate thought, it shaped it. Even today, walk the Scottish coast at night, and the same sensations emerge. The wind carries weight, the darkness presses close, the sea breathes endlessly, and somewhere within that vast quiet, the memory of the Nuckelavee still lingers. Not as terror, but as humility. Now, as your breathing slows and the rhythm of the world grows softer, let the shoreline stretch quietly before you. Dark water, faint moonlight, rolling mist. The horizon disappears. Nothing waits, nothing stirs, only the endless pulse of tide, and somewhere beyond sight, beyond form, the ancient presence recedes, returning once more to shadow. As the night deepens, the sea begins to soften, not in its motion, but in its voice. The crash of waves grows distant, the wind lowers its tone, and the endless breathing of the tide settles into a slow, even rhythm. This is the hour when the coastline releases its tension. Cliffs no longer stand alert, rocks no longer brace against impact. The water moves without urgency. Everything yields. Along the narrow inlets, where stone curves inward and pools gather in quiet pockets, the sea becomes almost still. Dark mirrors reflecting faint starlight. The mist drifts low, moving without direction, touching water, touching land, erasing the boundary between them. In this blurred world, nothing stands apart. This is where the Nuckelavee dissolves. Not retreating, not vanishing, but blending, returning to the elements that shaped it. Salt, wind, shadow, no form remains, only presence. The land exhales, grass bends gently toward rest. Stone cools, soil settles deeper into itself. Even the cliffs seem to lean inward, as though listening to the quiet. In these hours, human history fades, footprints vanish, paths soften, structures blur into silhouette. The world becomes simple again. Sea, sky, stone, nothing more. Long ago, those who lived here understood this return. They waited for it. After storms, after hardship, after long labor, they allowed the night to take them gently back into stillness. Stories were not meant to excite, they were meant to calm, to slow the pulse, to quiet the breath. To ease the mind away from urgency, the Nuckelavee served this purpose not by fear, but by reminder that everything, even terror, even loss, even storm, eventually settles. Now, as your breathing grows softer, let the coastline stretch across your thoughts. Cold air, salted wind, dark water. No motion stands out, no sound demands attention. The world is vast, but untroubled. The tide continues its endless cycle, advancing, retreating, without concern, without memory, without expectation. And in that rhythm, there is comfort, because nothing needs to be decided tonight. The hours stretch quietly now, unmarked, unmeasured, no longer divided into moments, only into breath and stillness. The sea continues its slow exchange with the shore, wave by wave, pull by pull, a conversation so old it no longer needs sound. Far out beyond the cliffs, where no lights remain, The water becomes indistinguishable from the sky, dark merging into darker, horizon dissolving entirely. There is no boundary here, only space, only motion, only rest. The wind drifts across open water, losing its edge, softening as it travels, until it becomes little more than a faint pressure against the skin, a reminder of movement, without demand. Clouds pass silently overhead, their shadows gliding across the sea's surface, unnoticed, unremembered. Everything moves, yet nothing changes. In this quiet, the body loosens, muscles soften, breath deepens. The mind releases its final grasp on the day. There is no urgency left, only the slow rhythm of existence, carrying thought gently towards sleep. The coast settles into its ancient posture. Stone presses against earth. Earth rests beneath grass. Grass bends toward the dark, each layer finding its place, each part supported by another. Nothing floats, nothing strains. Everything belongs, and within that belonging, a sense of peace emerges. Not excitement, not emotion, just presence. This is the stillness the old stories guarded. This is the calm they protected. Not through fear, but through reverence. As sleep draws nearer, thought loosens its grip, images blur, the edges of awareness soften, time slows, and then almost disappears. The sea becomes a low murmur, the wind becomes a whisper, the darkness becomes gentle, even the ancient presence fades, not gone, simply resting. There's nowhere else to go tonight, nothing left to follow, only the steady movement of breath, and the quiet assurance that the world remains, calm, balanced enough. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. This has been Fairy Tales After Dark.